Welcome to South-South News. I'm Bill Miller. One of the main goals of South-South News is to focus attention on innovative and creative activities, especially in the economic, social, and developmental areas that are taking place primarily in economically developing countries. My guest today is going to focus on what role can businesses play and developing partnerships in helping to create a better world. Amir Dossal is the recently retired Executive Director of the United Nations Office for Partnerships. Mr. Dossal's latest private sector initiative is the launching of the Global Partnerships Forum. Amir Dossal, welcome to South-South News.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I'm delighted to be here.
I appreciate you being with me. Let's start at the top. Global Partnerships Forum. We've talked about partnerships in the opening. What is the Global Partnerships Forum? What does it do? Why did you start it?
Well, essentially, we found at the United Nations that there's a lot of interest from the private sector to figure out new ways of helping address some of the global challenges. And they also want to see it as a business model. So what we're trying to do is to help them invest in the poor so that they help their bottom line, but they also help social issues. They help not just their customers, not just their stakeholders, but the communities surrounding them. So we want them to go what we call beyond the triple bottom line.
the triple bottom line.
Yes. The triple bottom line is a phrase increasingly used to look at issues not just economic and social, but also look at stakeholders, downstream, the supply chain, the stakeholders, the customers. We want them to see it as a way that they invest in the poor so that in the long term they create real sustainability. And the good news is many companies are starting to see this and see it from a perspective that if they help towards that goal, they also create new customers. So it is a win-win for everybody.
It's certainly in their best interest to help improve their community, but also to, as you say, go beyond the triple bottom line. That's very important. Now, how can people participate in this? How would one, if somebody were watching this program, where would they go to get more information, and how could they participate and become involved in doing what you're suggesting?
So we have a website for Global Partnerships Forum. It's globalpf.org. And the idea is very simple. Companies, foundations, individuals, social entrepreneurs, governments, even international organizations can seek advice and ideas, and our role is to thread some of these pieces together. We do not do any projects, but we help others do it. Because at the end of the day, it's about empowerment, empowering others and helping them replicate those models in other countries. There's a lot of expertise out there, and all we want to do is to provide them a convenient platform to make it happen. From an idea to an action, from a commitment to a concrete project.
Now, who are some of the businesses that are participating or you would like to participate in the future and to be involved in this?
What we're very pleased about is the high amount of interest from a range of sectors. We work with the pharma sector, we work with the information technology sector, we work with manufacturing, we work with downstream retailers, for example. And there are a number of companies who have expressed an interest and actually who are participating as well. One model, if I can mention, is Royal DSM, a Dutch life sciences company, which is doing great work on creating sustainable business models. Now, it comes from the top. It comes from the leadership, from the CEO of Royal DSM, and it is in their DNA that whilst they make money, they also want to do social good. And they look at a product from the prism of long-term sustainability. Now, when you look at it from that perspective, you're automatically, if you help the communities get uplifted and they become consumers downstream. Nestle is another company. Nestle has the concept of creating shared value. And Nestle's model is, we have expertise, we want to share with others. And if we share with others, and if, for example, helping farmers in Africa improve their productivity, that means the crops and the outputs which come out of it have a higher standard, And those supplies, when they get back to Nestlé's, let's say, their products, they reduce the risk of recall. So it's a business model for them as well as a social model.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a very unique model. You focused on several different areas here, but I'm thinking, as I was thinking along these lines, there's a concept that's been underway now for really over 10 years, the Millennium Development Goals, drafted by the majority of the countries at the United Nations back in 2008. Logical, quantifiable goals to reduce abject poverty by 50% by 2015, to reverse the AIDS epidemic, to reduce infant mortality rates, goals that most people can gravitate to, rally around. And I know a lot of businesses are involved in working with UN agencies, working with groups, civil society, in helping to overcome this. Does your model, does your group tie into this in some way, shape, or form to work on the Millennium Development Goals?
I'm so glad you asked that. Indeed, our focus is the Millennium Development Goals, because we believe that at the end of the day, helping people improve their quality of lives is actually directly related to peace and security in the world. So we support projects and programs which are related to these MDGs. And we try and encourage companies to think from that perspective. Climate change, water, sanitation, poverty alleviation, health, education. All of these can be wrapped around the concept of partnerships, public-private partnerships.
It's very, very important. Climate change, that is probably, I mean, there are many problems in this world, many challenges, but climate change is probably the #1 challenge. How can folks focus on that? How can you move that discussion forward and get people to think about what they can do to reduce the ill effects of climate change?
First of all, I was thrilled to see the outcome of the Cancun discussions, and Secretary General Ban Ki-moon did a wonderful job in getting countries to rally around this idea. Now, what is coming out is that companies are beginning to see there's an opportunity for them as well. How do they address the issues of climate change, the impact of climate change, carbon offsets, etc., and also looking at alternative sources of energy. We're now back to the era where oil prices are starting to climb. That has an impact on food prices. So we're looking at also helping companies grow alternative crops, biofuels, address CO2 emissions, but from a business model. If farmers see a business prospect out there, they will do that. They will do it from a point of sustainability. And if what we want them to do is farmers in the developed countries help farmers in developing countries. So we want them to share their expertise, their technical know-how, and make it available to farmers in Africa, for example. And if they do that, then we don't really have food shortage. 7% of the land in the United States, for example, is untilled land. It cannot grow normal crops. So you can perhaps use it for alternative energy, which doesn't require all the high-powered tilling of the land. Mm-hmm. You can grow crops which can be used to produce biofuel, for example. And that could produce 33 billion, equivalent of 33 billion gallons. So when you think of it, there are opportunities out there.
There certainly are. And you mentioned the fact that oil prices are going up, and that could, of course, if oil prices go up, that could derail the economic recovery in many areas of the world. Food prices are spiking. The Food and Agriculture Organization, a UN agency, recently warned that these prices are going up. So there are some challenges out there that we need to confront, and we need to focus upon them. What, as you look around with the involvement of the folks, you were talking about the business model and the businesses, business sectors, do you see a lot of best practices coming up that can be used, can be adopted, that folks can, or various businesses can look at and say, here's something that works. Here's something that it may work in country A and we'll try it in country B. Are you seeing best practices, and are they sharing this information?
So the last 5 years, we've started seeing that shift. Companies, even not just traditional chemical companies, not just traditional retailers or manufacturing companies, But also kind of service industries are saying, we need to look at the world in a very different perspective. We need to look at future generations. If we are to address the issue of climate change and the Secretary General's various initiatives to reduce carbon emissions by 50% by 2050, etc., those kinds of initiatives can only take place if we share best practice. If we learn from what's happening already and what the mistakes are and success stories. And our goal is to put in the Global Partnerships Forum ideas about what works and what doesn't work. What we call partnership projects, successful stories. Now it's a huge task, and I don't profess for one moment to be able to say to you that we will have all the answers available on the website. But our goal is to make it available. So we intend to put together a database of these success stories so that people can just go and use it and say, oh, I can model mine on that, but with tweaking it for my local conditions.